I'm ready to show you just some basic, simple light patination right now using a couple different methods. Now, once the mirror is stripped, obviously it's very difficult to tell which side is which, which side is the front side and which side is the back side. These particular squares of glass have beveled mirror, so obviously the bevel is on the front side. But if you're using a piece of smooth glass, it's going to look the same on both sides. One way that you can tell is that the exposed silvering side will have a little bit of like a yellowish, kind of a goldish cast to it. It looks a little like from the side you can kind of see. Also, you'll be able to tell because when I'm looking on the back side, I can't see any of the glass. When I'm looking from the front side, I can actually see the thickness of the glass because the silvering is on the back. All right, so obviously you want to make sure that you're working on the correct side of the glass, which would be the back. Now you can see that these mirrors are pretty dirty. This is the front side. It's pretty dirty. I'm not going to bother cleaning it now because I'm going to be doing all kinds of other stuff to it. So it doesn't make sense to clean it now. So I'm going to turn these both over so that I'm working on the back side or the exposed silvered surface. And I'm just going to clean these up a little bit just with some water and the microfiber cloth just to get all those fingerprints and stuff off. And it's okay if there's a little bit on there, but just want to make sure that you get off, all the rest of that residue. All right, I'm going to put this one out of the way. One thing is you do have to be careful anytime you have any exposed silver surface and there's amps in the air, it's going to get on it. So I want to make sure that that's well out of the way and covered up. So, all right, so I've got my two pieces of glass here and I want to show you two different techniques. One is the kind of like a pour and wipe technique. And this is just now for basic patination, which, something that you may end up, actually doing a lot of. This is pretty much the most common thing that you're gonna do with the amp solution. So I'm gonna use the full strength amps for this. So again, remember I told you always wanna shake it up because stuff will settle in the bottom. And I have a damp rag here and I'm going to use my spray bottle with water. So I'm going to set this over here. So what I'm going to do is just mist the surface with the water. I'm going to rub it around. And then I'm going to mist it with the amps. And just keep rubbing it. So this is with this technique, this is a little more work because you basically are babysitting it. So you're going to, of course, the more water you add on the surface, the more you're diluting it. But with this, you're just going to keep wiping probably for about 5 minutes while the amp solution works its way through to the other side. And whenever you're doing any mirror patination, don't think that you're going to start something and then walk away, take a phone call, go check your email, go get something to eat. It is something that you have to watch because once it gets to a certain point, you have to arrest the patination with water in order to make it stop. So if you just kind of walk away and you forget about it, you can come back and end up with something that's not what you intended. The other thing to keep in mind is if you are doing multiple mirrors and wanting them to be, all the same, look the same, they're going in the same application, you want to be doing them all, basically at the same time in the same type of environmental conditions so that you end up with the same result. But you have to be careful that you don't do too many at one time unless you have help because you've got to get them, rinsed off quickly once it gets to the point where you want it. So as I'm doing this, I'm going to keep looking and seeing if anything is coming through. So at this point, I don't see anything, so I'm going to keep working. So the key with this technique is that you're just going to keep it moving around on the surface. So it's not going to get any like set pattern in it. And you can see how the surface on this side has turned golden, and that tells me that the patination is starting to work. So again, I want to keep checking it. Okay, well this took about 10 minutes because of the, adding the water to the surface first and then using the regular strength. It's a little bit more diluted, so it does happen less quickly, but it is the best way if you want a really controlled patination and a very light patination. This is really the safest way to do it. The things that are going to obviously affect how quickly your patination works and how strongly your patination works are, one, the temperature of the mirror. So the hotter the mirror is, the quicker that will happen, and also the dilution strength of your amp. So if it's more diluted, if it has more water, it's going to take longer. If it has more amps in the gel in the solution, it's going to happen much quicker. But if you're wanting a controlled patination, this is a good way to do it, and also you'll end up with something very light. The other thing to really keep in mind is that you want to arrest this or rinse it to stop the patination before it gets to the point that you want, because it's going to continue to patinate about 15 to 20% more. So I'm just going to leave this just a little bit longer, and I don't have to keep wiping it like constantly, but you just want to keep that moving so you don't end up with a strong pattern in there. One thing that you can do to help to neutralize the amps on the surface is rinse it and then also spray it with a baking soda solution. So this is baking soda and water. It's about a tablespoon of baking soda into 16 ounces of water. So that is another option for you. Okay, so I am going to stop this now because I think it's really will be a nice sample for a very light patination. It's you don't see it really strong. It's very subtle, and remember that it's going to keep patinating a little bit more even after I rinse it. So let's go over to the sink and I'll rinse this off. All right, I'm using a soft sponge to just wipe away the excess amp. I don't want to press too hard because now I have got a very delicate, fragile surface here. So just light sponge with some warm water and rinse that off well. And I'm going to let this air dry. Now I want to show you my favorite technique and the one that I use most often, and this is called the saturation technique. For this technique, you're going to need another piece of cloth, and this is just thin cotton muslin. It was probably an old sheet or an old scrap of fabric that I cut up into size squares that will cover different sizes of mirror shapes that I'm working with. And this has been wet with water and wrung out, so it's not dripping wet, it's just damp. Then I'm going to lay this over my mirror silvered surface and smooth it out. And then I'm just going to roll over it with, this is just a dry roller to smooth it out, because in this case I don't want wrinkles. Sometimes if you want, you can put pattern into it, like a crackle pattern or a wrinkled pattern, but in this case I just want like my light patination. So this is damp now, so I'm going to want it to happen a little bit quicker. So I'm going to use the extra strength amps, and that's what I use most often, especially if I'm in a little bit more of a hurry. So with this now, you want to just spray and then work this in. And I use the saturation technique almost exclusively when I'm doing pattern work. So you're gonna see this a lot again. I just wanna show you with the basic patination how this works. And it does, it helps to kind of hold the amps in and push it into the surface like this. So it does tarnish a little bit more quickly this way. But just like with the other technique, you want to make sure that you're watching it. Don't walk away. You want to keep an eye on it and keep looking at it. And you can actually see some patination has started to occur. I can actually see that through the cloth. And again, I'm going to keep lifting and looking. All right, I've let this go a couple more minutes. I think it's about to where I want it, knowing again that it's going to continue to patinate about another 15–20%. So I'm gonna go and rinse this off, and we'll be back later and I'll be showing you how to finish it off and do some different coloring techniques on the back. But with this one, there were a couple of areas where it bit in a little bit stronger, and that's very common when you see patinated mirror. It's not going to always be too uniform, and that's, this is totally fine. It's just a little bit different look. The other thing I wanted to remind you too is, you really have to be careful, especially after patination. This surface is going to be very, very fragile. So always handle it with care. Don't put your fingers on it. Keep your fingers away from it. Hold it from the side, and don't let it get scratched. And and then you're going to be wanting to seal it pretty quickly after this process, so that it doesn't continue to patinate, because basically what we're doing here is speeding up the process of what would happen naturally over time. And you can strip backing off a mirror and leave it sitting around for a couple of months, and you'll end up with some patination on it. We're just speeding up that process here. So after doing this, it's going to be much more fragile, so you want to take extra care with it until you get it all sealed back up again.